Hey there, kiddos! Today I'm going to make a little house for Mouse. So grab your things and we'll get started. All right, kiddos, look, we have a house for Mouse. But we might need to know something about the measurement of the house that Mouse lives in. So let's think about what we learned yesterday when we were thinking about perimeter, and we got a little preview of what we'd be working on today, which is figuring out area. So I want to know, what's the area of the house that Mouse lives in? Well, we're looking at the figure that's in brown, and we've got some information given to us that's listed in purple. So let's take a look at what we do know. Right across the top, we know that we have 14 meters and 5 meters down the side. But how do we figure out for these empty spaces? Yesterday we talked about spaces being pushed in for perimeter. But when we're working with area, I'm wondering if we can go to the technique I showed you yesterday where we think about different rectangles within the composite figure. So let's take a look at this. If I want to solve for the top part of Mouse's house, the area, how could I solve it? Did you say 14 times 5 because length times width equals area? Great. Now I'm going to push you to think about solving this in this horizontal manner, but if you really have to stack your numbers, you can, and both are correct and fine. Can we say 5 times 10 and hold that? What does that equal? 50. And 5 times 4, that equals 20. Can you add 50 and 20? Great. We've got 70, and we're talking about meters here, so let's show that there. So the top part of Mouse's house is 70 square meters. Well, let's talk about the bottom part of Mouse's house, or the side, depending on which way you're looking at it. We know that the bottom part here is 4 meters, and we have to go to the information over here to solve for this little side. So I can just take that information, and we have 5 meters. So I feel like you can just do that mentally. 5 meters times 4 meters, or just say 5 times 4, gives us 20 square meters. Is it easy enough to add the two of those up? The area for our whole composite figure is 70 plus 20, and that equals 90. Whoops, we're doing meters, not centimeters today. Whew, Mousy, you've got quite a sizable home. Mousy, can you think of another way we could solve it? This is the way that makes the most sense to my brain, but for some kids, they might want to look at it differently. Let's give it a try. Maybe we want to think about it in smaller sections. Something like this. Now we know that the length of this little square part and the width are equal because this is a little square. So 5 times 5, that gives me 25. Nice job. Oops, why do I keep trying to call it centimeters? We worked on those the other day. All right, those are meters. And do we now know what this section over here is? Yeah, it's just the same. We've got 25 over here. Now we still have to solve for this part. Well, guess what? This information down here is what we can use. So we've got 4, but what's the length of this inside rectangle? We take the information from here. So it's 10. So 4 times 10 equals, very good, 40 square meters. Now we put those together and you can think of 50 plus 40. We still have the same area, right? We can get at it different ways, but the area doesn't change. All right, so let's change the shape of our figure and do some more work. Alrighty, now we have a different shaped house for Mouse, and this time we're working with yards. So we've got a couple of different ways we can go again, right? I wonder at home if you can identify some way to break this whole thing up to make it manageable. Mouse, how about we just go outside the house? Boop. Now Mouse is outside Mouse's house in a tiny little courtyard. I wonder what the measurement of that courtyard is. We've got 3 by 5. Do you notice this 5 yards down here really is for the measurement of that? So 3 times 5 equals what? 15. Can you think of a way of knowing the size of Mouse's courtyard could help us solve for the area for Mouse's house? Great! We can take a look at length times width for the whole rectangle. And we've got 12 times, now we've got some adding to do. When you've added these up, would you call it out to me? Very good. That equals 10. And I know pretty easily you can do 12 times 10, and that equals? Very good. 120. Let me just show you. I'm going to do an outline of the whole rectangle in red. Kind of get in there so you can see it. That whole thing equals 120 square yards. But we've got Mouse's little courtyard, and that part is not inside the house. We have to get rid of that part. So how can we do it? Very good. We'll say 120 yards minus the 15 yards for Mouse's courtyard. And what do we get there? Did you say 105 square yards? That is the area for Mouse's house. Now, let's take a look at one more way to solve that. If you didn't like subtracting Mouse's courtyard, another way to think about it is to look at all the rectangles we have inside and solve for the area for those. So how about we use our ruler even to help us out? I'm going to break this part up here, and break this part up here. So now, can you see this larger rectangle? And then we've got these smaller rectangles. Now, you may have already figured out that we've got a little more work to do going this direction, but let's do it together anyway. To solve for this length, or we'll talk about it here, we have to take 12 yards and say 12 minus 5. And what do we get? 12 minus 5 is 7. So now we have to think about the length here, which we solved for the last time around and said that was 10. Alrighty, so 10 times 7 gives us 70. Great, that one is pretty simple. So we've got 70 square yards for this area. Now let's look at this little section here. I think we've got a measurement down here that's going to help us. 5 times 4, and that gives us 20. Good job. Now, this is a little tricky, but not too hard. This is 3 yards. This was 4 yards. This little part is 3 yards. But we still know that the section across here is 5 yards. So we've got 5 times 3 for this part. Very good. That gives us 15 square yards. Oh, somebody said, Mrs. Dillon, you forgot the little 2. Great, we can fix it. All right, let's add this together. 70, 80, 90, 100, 105. The area of Mouse's house is still 105 square yards. All right, Mouse, you may go back inside. All right, kiddos, it's always good to take a look at things multiple different ways. And teachers, I want to remind you that as students work through this kind of work where there are multiple steps, multiplication, addition, sometimes subtraction. Some kids just really need to slow down, take their time. I like to write the problems up on a whiteboard instead of always looking at the book because sometimes the numbers are written kind of small and the space for your answer is kind of small. So take your time, find your space, fill it up, solve your problem, and I'll see you back here next time.